Hey guys, it's Intrasix here, and welcome to the fourth episode of Questlog, the daily video journal series in which I talk about my own personal opinions and anything that catches my attention, really. So, episode 4, I want to talk more about the Xbox brand in general and what I expect from it going into the future. So, we got E3 coming up, and to be honest, my outlook of Xbox isn't as positive as some other people's because I just don't trust it. I don't trust that it can do a good job. I don't trust that the Xbox One in particular is being handled pretty well. It's actually being handled very, very poorly, in my opinion, and I don't think it has a positive outlook, mostly because of the evidence that it's being run poorly as it is. So, this is what I hope that Microsoft can demonstrate during E3 to keep their Xbox brand alive, because I do believe that competition is important. I do believe that competition is what drives companies to make better products when they are afraid that another one might snatch their consumer base and their fans. So here's to a good future for the Xbox brand, and hopefully they do manage to come out of this slump. But here is how I think they should do it. So first of all, going into E3, they're riding on the back of this Xbox Scorpio shenanigans, which I think is being blown out of proportion. I don't think it's going to be as important as people imply it is, mostly because a lot of people out there, they don't have the latest TVs to run the 4K, and with the way they're making it sounds as though it's going to be way too powerful. And what I mean by way too powerful, meaning that when a console is too powerful, the price range is probably going to be very, very high for it. A lot of people are assuming like around $400. Looking at the specs, it has the same sort of power as a mid-range PC. So with that said, I think it would personally be more around the $600 range. So out of E3, I hope they really clarify the price point of the new Xbox Scorpio or whatever they decide to name it, and I hope that it is affordable for the average consumer to get, because otherwise they'd be wasting their time. No one's going to buy it. It's going to be the same thing as the PlayStation 4 Pro, in which initially a lot of people didn't buy it because they didn't see a point to it. You don't have a 4K TV, you don't need a PlayStation 4 Pro. Even if later on with an update, they did manage to make the performance of games better through patches. So, with that said, they really need a strong start by announcing Xbox Scorpio. They need to announce a date in which it will be released, and they need to announce a date. Not a date. They need to announce a price point for it that more or less goes with the average consumer's price point. So, around $400 I think would be sufficient, but I think they would be selling at a loss. And at this point, they got to weigh their options, and, they just got to make it work. They got to get consoles out there because they're being sold 2-to-1, outsold 2-to-1 by PlayStation, and they're not in a very good position. Now, as far as the rest of E3, I think they should really play on the power of the Xbox One Scorpio. Whether it is a new system or whether it is just another iteration of the Xbox One, I think they should play on the power. And with that said, I think they should get developers to make exclusive games for it, because that is what the Xbox brand currently is lacking heavily, is exclusive games. When you look at the PlayStation brand, you're looking at games like, well, Nier Automata is not really an exclusive because you can also get it on PC, but it's exclusive for consoles. And you have like Persona 5, you have Horizon Zero Dawn, you have Detroit Become Human coming up later. Whether this year or next year, I forget when it was that they announced it for. You have God of War coming up. You have all of these big name exclusives. You had The Last of Us Part 2 whenever they decide to release that. They announced it at PSX. And you know what? It's looking very bright for PlayStation, but I don't see the same sort of thing for Xbox One. You have, personally, while I did enjoy the concept of a game like Scalebound, which I'm sort of sad that it got axed, but at the same time, looking at all the trailers, it didn't run well. The frames were dipping a lot, and it didn't look like it was gonna run well on the Xbox One. So I can see why they wouldn't want to make it, but at the same time, that's another exclusive that Xbox isn't gonna get. And I think that's sad. I think it's very, very sad because with no exclusives means that there's no reason for anyone to buy an Xbox. No matter what the cost, no matter how cheap it is, people wouldn't want to buy an Xbox. You know, by people I mean gamers, because let's be honest here, a lot of consoles are sold as multimedia machines, but nowadays you have phones, you have smart TVs that are replacing what something like the PS2 that could play DVDs, or something like the PS3, which at the time was probably one of the more fairly priced Blu-ray players. You know, as a multimedia machine, consoles just aren't cutting it out anymore because it's not important anymore, because everything will play your Netflix, your Hulus, everything will play your YouTubes. Most consoles will adopt your HBOs, and now with, you know, PlayStation View, and I'm not sure if Xbox has an equivalent to it, but now you can get TV streamed right to your console. So using them as a multimedia machine isn't as important anymore. So the people that are gonna buy the consoles are gonna be the gamers. And for that very same reason is why you should have games exclusive to your system if you want to attract gamers, which are, you know, the blood that keeps the gaming industry going, because they're the ones who are buying games. They're the ones who are going to buy several games for the system. You know, someone might buy it for FIFA, but they're not going to buy any other games, and that's the less vocal minority in the gaming industry. So for that, what I want to see on E3, Microsoft's press conference, is that I want to see games. I want it to be made about games. Give us an update on Crackdown 3. What's going on with that? Are they going to announce a new Halo? Do they have anything else being worked on? You know, are they going to pick up, for example, PlayStation picked up the Spider-Man. They made a deal with Marvel Games, and now they're making a Spider-Man. Should Xbox do something like that? Are we going to see a superhero game coming into the Xbox One? Are we going to see, however unlikely it is, you know, a lot of Japanese developers tend to skip out on Xbox because they don't believe that their games will matter on that system. You know, granted that it hasn't sold well in Japan, but I think that's besides the point, because I feel that they could get some pretty decent support here in the US. It's not so much that it can't sell, it's just that people aren't used to buying it in this console. Why? Because they don't release games for it. Eventually, you gotta start somewhere. You get what I'm saying? You gotta start somewhere. So if they start releasing Japanese games on the Xbox, eventually it'll become a serious medium for them to sell these type of games. And a lot of exclusives will roll into Xbox, because I believe that Xbox is a decent platform for gamers. It's excellent. Just look at the success of the Xbox 360. That was a device for gamers, and gamers took advantage of that because it had games, something that the PS3 didn't have at its launch. So with that said, that's what I hope that happens in E3. I hope they announce games and they just let it all out. They let it all out for people to see. You know, stop planning behind the scenes and let us, you know, the people, know what it is that you're doing so we can support you. Because if we don't know, we're going to look to some other company like Nintendo. We're going to look to another company like Sony. And with them, they're going to show us, hey, we got this game, this game, this game, this game coming up. And then in Nintendo, you got Mario Kart coming up. You're going to have a Smash Brothers at some point. You're going to have another Zelda probably at some point. You're going to have Super Mario Odyssey coming up in the holiday season. So their futures are looking bright because they're focusing on what matters to gamers the most, and that is games. So please, Microsoft, please do show us some exclusives that'll give us confidence, at least, you know, to a person who's willing to buy an Xbox One, to give them confidence that more games are coming. Because at this point, take it from my perspective, I don't have an Xbox One. I was never interested in one because the games I wanted to play were all available on PS4, and the PS4 had more exclusives that I wanted to play. With that said, why would I buy an Xbox One if everything I want is on the PlayStation 4 and more? And I feel that that's the reason why it's being outsold 2-1. It's ridiculous. What kind of console wouldn't have games? And it's not to say that Xbox One doesn't have any games. Of course it does, but it doesn't have as many exclusive games of consequence as the Sony brand. So with that said, I'll say it before and I'll say it again. They need to announce games. Games is what's important to the gamer. Aside from that, I want to see how they do the Play Anywhere thing. Because at this point, I'm extremely discouraged from buying an Xbox One because I just recently built a gaming PC. And with that said, games like Gears of War 4, Forza Horizon 3, those games that are major for the Xbox platform, and some of the other ones coming out which are exclusives like Sea of Thieves, will also be available for me to play on PC if I buy them digitally, which is how you play games typically on PC. Actually, not typically, just all the time. All of them are downloadable. So with that said, if I can play anything I want on the PC and not on the Xbox, why would I get an Xbox? That's another reason that I think Microsoft shot themselves in the foot, because they're making the majority of their exclusives of consequence available on the PC. With that said, is it truly an exclusive anymore? How are they going to limit these things? And another thing that I wanted to touch upon is if developers want to take advantage of the extra power of the Xbox Scorpio to make better games or make more diverse games, will that still run on older Xbox One S's, or is it a completely new platform to begin with? The thing I want to clarify with that is that the shift in power from the Xbox One S to the supposed power of the Xbox One Scorpio is a very, very big shift, because you're looking at performance-wise something very close to like a mid to like lower high range PCs. With that said, wouldn't a game developer want to take advantage of that? And how would those games made for the Scorpio work with older Xboxes like Microsoft is trying to do? Are you really going to bottleneck developers by giving them this more powerful machine that they can use to its fullest extent? I think that's a mistake. I think the Scorpio should just be a completely new system and they should just start over from scratch. Sort of as to apologize to the gamers that were disappointed with the Xbox One. Because that is their life and blood. That's what keeps the Xbox brand running, the gamers. Can't say it enough. Gamers are the ones that keep these systems alive. It's not going to be the average consumer. It's going to be the gamers who are passionate about gaming like you and I. With that said, why would someone like a PC gamer buy an Xbox One, considering that PC gamers just in general aren't too fascinated with consoles? Why would they buy an Xbox One if their exclusives are available in their platform? There's plenty of reasons why a PC gamer would want to buy a PS4, because it has exclusives. So aside from the exclusive front, that's what I want to know. Will the Xbox Scorpio have exclusives all to its own? Will it further divide the Xbox fan base? Because I don't think that is a wise maneuver on their part. So, you know what? At the end of the day, I just want them to do well. I just want them to do well because I was always fascinated by Xbox. Every time I would walk into a Best Buy, or back in the day when I would walk into a Blockbuster, I would try to play all the demos that they had for the Xbox 360. The controller is excellent. I personally have an Xbox One controller that I use on my PC for platformers and, anything that's not a shooter. I have it. It's an excellent controller. It's designed beautifully. I think it looks a lot better than, in my opinion, than the PS4. Especially the PlayStation 4 Slim. And especially the PlayStation 4 Pro, which I'm not a big fan of its design, but I digress. So, this is something that I admire of the Xbox brand. They're very good at marketing their products, but unfortunately, there's not much to market in their current ecosystem. And that's why I think it needs a change. And that's why I think they should just try to move away from the initial disaster that was the Xbox One, because it's obviously not going to work for them in the long run. With that said, let's look forward to a good E3. Let's hope that they do provide some competition, that they do manage to revive themselves, or that they announce a new system completely altogether. Because at the end of the day, I think, honestly, in my opinion, I think it's too late to recover the Xbox One. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's possible. Unless they announce like 7 or 8 or 10 games exclusive to the Xbox One. They don't even have to be exclusive, honestly. As long as it has exclusive content that'll drive you to get an Xbox One. For example, if they have exclusive content for, let's say, Battlefield 1, or whatever the next Call of Duty is, or whatever the next Star Wars Battlefront, whichever multi-platform game you have, as long as they have some exclusive content, like separate level, or some different like proprietary weapons that you can use in the game, that'll make people want to go more and lean more towards the Xbox brand. And they just gotta pick and choose their battles at this point. They gotta get the rights to certain games, and at this point, developers, they're looking at the install base of the PlayStation 4, and sadly, very sadly, it's drowning out the install base of the Xbox One S, or the Xbox One in general. So they just gotta fix their mistakes. They gotta bow down and apologize to their consumers and promise a better looking future. With that said, I'm getting sick and tired of repeating that. I hope that they do manage to recover themselves, because it would be a very sad world in which Sony is left to do its business unopposed. I think it lacks imagination, and I think it for sure lacks any real drive to progress towards a better future for the gaming industry and the console market industry in general. And Nintendo isn't a good substitution, because they're doing their own thing. They're off doing their own little creative crap, and it's in its own sphere, it's in its own bubble, and the PlayStation 4 and Xbox brands are in their own bubble. They're in their own high definition gaming. Nintendo's doing its own, whatever the fuck it's doing. And you just gotta hope they recover. They have this E3. I don't think they can afford another mistake or another mishap with any of their announcements. So please, Xbox, please demonstrate to us that you have a bright future in this gaming industry, and please show us give us confidence in your brand once again, like you used to have. So those are my opinions and the hopes that I have for the Xbox One coming this E3. I will follow up on any of the announcements that they have for the press conferences. I will give my opinions and impressions once they're out. So look forward to those. They're going to be coming in the future. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to become a supporter on Patreon, I have the link in the description. See you guys. Peace.